Hey guys, Zomfox here, and we are less than 2 weeks away from the 2025 UFL season kicking off. Yes, it's crazy to think about it, but if you're watching this today's video is released, it's on the 17th. We are literally less than 2 weeks away, right? Next Friday after this week is kickoff, and so now is the perfect time to do my predictions for the 2025 UFL season. Now, this upcoming season I think is going to be a very tough one to call, mainly because of the fact that in my opinion, I think there's 6 teams that if they were to win the championship, I would be absolutely not shocked at. Now, there's 2 teams I would be shocked if they even make the playoffs, but the other 6, it was really hard to determine where I would put them in my overall my overall standings for the season, because of the fact that it's just really close to call. Yes, we still haven't had the final cuts yet and a couple other things, so some people might say this is a little premature, but I think it's overall pretty fine to do it now. We kind of know what these teams are. We pretty much know that like a team like Arlington is not bringing back a lot of their guys that we were waiting to see if they're going to re-sign. We know a lot of these teams' quarterback rooms, so I figured now is a good time to do it. So without further ado, let's start with 4th place in the XFL Conference, and that's going to be the DC Defenders. Now, this shouldn't be a shock to really anybody. The fact is DC, I've made this very apparent, I'm not a huge fan of their offseason. A big thing for me is that it feels like they're trying to bring back like the same team in a lot of ways and just hope that Abram Smith being healthy solves everything. And I've said before, I don't think that's a good idea. I'm not a Jordan Talmadge believer. I believe that he is one of the more overrated quarterbacks in spring football. I don't think he's a bad quarterback, but he's not a guy that's going to win you a championship. He can be a quarterback on a championship-winning team, but if everybody else isn't carrying him, in the 3 spring football seasons in the ultra-modern era, which of course dates back to the 2022 USFL, he has led the league in interceptions twice. And the one year he didn't, he had an unfathomably good receiving core and a running back that was the best running back in his league by a country mile. Look, with the only real argument being Chris Odom in 2022, no player in this era of spring football has been more dominant at their position in a single season in their league than Abram Smith in the XFL in 2023, again, with the possible exception of 2022 Chris Odom. That's how good Abram Smith was. Without him this past season, the team just fell off a cliff. They finished like 4-6, but they were a lot worse of a team than the 4-6 record states they were. They just weren't good. Simple as that. Te'ama didn't play well. Reggie Barlow didn't coach well. The receiving core wasn't great. They had a couple guys like, Ty Scott, Calvin Harmon, who were really solid, but overall not a great core. The running back room was exactly like I expected it to be. I said when Smith got hurt, I said that running back room is really weak, and it ended up being really weak. The defense, not great. That's the biggest issue with that team. Whereas other teams that were weak on both sides of the ball really overhauled their roster in a lot of ways, the Defenders were weak on both sides of the ball and really didn't fully commit to overhauling everything, and a lot of that is sticking with Te'ama. I said it during the season last year that sticking with Te'ama the last couple of games is a really bad idea. You didn't get to see what you had in Jalen McClendon, and if, let's just say, we're in the universe where McClendon ends up stepping up for the Roughnecks and leads them to the playoffs, that's going to look horrible on DC because of the fact they let him go. I don't think it's going to happen, which we'll get to later, but it's just a bad move. I'm just not a fan of the DC. I said it before, I said it again, I'm not a huge fan of it. Yes, I know they're going to have a home field advantage, but I think their home field advantage, if you saw my attendance prediction video, isn't going to be as dominant as in years past. So when you add in that, I think they finish probably like 3-7. They'll probably get a win over Houston, and they'll probably win like a game here or there in their own conference. Maybe. I think 3-7 is a pretty expected record for them. I just don't see a lot of them. I know that some people are really high in this team. I'm not. I think that they're by far the weakest in their conference. I think that this conference has 3 really, really good teams, and then there's the DC Defenders. Now, before getting to the 3rd spot, this is what I might say is kind of a cop-out, but it's true how I feel. This was much harder than the USFL side. The fact is, I think any one of these 3 teams between the Renegades, Battlehawks, and Brahmas could easily go like 8-2 or go like 4-6, just because of them playing each other. You know what I mean? They're all really good teams on paper or in your head how you envision them playing, whether it be to high-end talent and overall great roster or great coaching. It's hard to decipher which team goes where. And it's important to note that my Power Rankings video that's going to come out next Monday, as an FYI, my Power Rankings are not my season predictions. The top 4 teams in my Power Rankings are not my prediction. The Power Rankings are just on right now. This is across the season. Now, when I say across the season and with how close these 3 teams are, essentially I just said this. The big 3 categories: home field advantage, quarterbacking, and coaching. how do these three teams stack up against each other, and that's how I determined where I put them on the rankings here, or on my predictions for the season. Because it's just, I think it's too close to call. Each team has their own question marks. Arlington had the most to fix, but they had the best overall core to win them a championship. San Antonio has a couple huge glaring weaknesses, but has a couple huge glaring strengths on their team. St. Louis kind of a wild card with a lot of the changes they've done, their coaching and all that. But when you look at those big three, that's the only reason why number 3 I'm putting as the Brahmas at 5-5. I think the Brahmas is going to be a winning team, but if you have kept up with all the offseason stuff, you know the big issue for them is they only have 4 home games after playing St. Louis twice. That's going to be what dooms them. When you judge them by those 3 standards, come in number 1 in coaching. They have the best coaching on those 3 teams by far. No disrespect to Bob Stoops, but they have the best of those ones because you have a great head coach and a great OC. Quarterback room, insanely weak. This team's quarterback room is hope that Kellen Mond is not terrible, and that's it. Because if you have to go to your backups, yikes. And then home field advantage, by far the weakest of the 3, because of the fact they only have 4 home games. They have to play in St. Louis twice. Not good. Essentially, 5-5 record is, I kind of expect them to start the season like 2-3 or 1-4, and then they're going to go like 4-1. They're basically going to be like Arlington last season. They're going to start off really slow in terms of the win column, and they're going to end up picking up the pace when it's a little too late. I look at those 4 first home games, and that's really the biggest issue, or those first 4 road games. It's not a matter of playing on the road, it's who you're playing. You're starting the season at Arlington, which is, I'm not even joking, is probably the one you're most looking forward to because, yes, I think DC is going to be a worse team than Arlington, but playing at DC, even though I still think their crowd's going to be weaker than it's in years past, it's still going to be a top crowd in the league. So either way, those are both scary games. Going to St. Louis and going to Michigan suck. The Brahmas have the biggest issue in the fact that their 2 USFL road games are the Panthers and Stallions. Those are the 2 teams you do not want to play on the road if you're in the XFL conference. They have to play them on the road. It is entirely possible that they win either the DC Arlington game and then win the Houston game to start, 2-3. Then they lose the game to Birmingham and they end up going like all pretty much winning out aside from like one other game to end the season. I just don't think this team is going to be able to fully overcome it because of the fact that they have that weak quarterback room. Now, like I said, I still think this team has the potential to win a championship because they have an incredible running back group. That duo of Lovett and McFarland is insane. They have an incredible head coach, easily the 3rd best in the league in Wade Phillips. They have a great OC. The defense should still be really good. It's just a matter of that initial 4-game stretch is just daunting. It's not just playing on the road. It's not like you get lucky. Like, if their first 4 road games were like at Arlington, at Houston, at Memphis, and then at like DC or something, that would still suck, but it wouldn't be awful. But the fact that you have to start the season with at Michigan, at St. Louis, at DC, and then of course you open the season with the Renegades, and then you get that one break in Houston where you play at home, but then you have to go right back to Birmingham, that sucks. It really does. And so because of that, it's why I'm putting them here. Again, I think that these 3 teams are really close to each other. On my power rankings, I'm still going to have the Brahmas higher than the 2 teams above them, barring anything changes. I might move them below one of them, but odds are they're still going to be higher than that. But across the season, I think that it's going to finally catch up to them at some point, having to play on the road and all that. But again, I wouldn't be shocked if they even go 8-2. I think this team has the potential for it. But judging by those big 3 categories of coaching, quarterbacking, and home field advantage, they're the weakest. Put them at 3. Number 2 is St. Louis Battlehawks, 6-4. They have the weakest coaching by far with Anthony Beck, and their questionable OC, considering they have, a new one because Greg Arkowski left, which granted that might be an upgrade for him. But the point is, weakest coaching staff. They have the 2nd best quarterback group, though the difference from 1st to 2nd is a pretty drastic difference. We all know why. And then home field advantage, they have the best in the league. So it averages out to them being 2nd on those 3 teams in the big 3 categories. Now 6-4. Basically, you just have to go like 5-1 or 4-2 in your home games, and then you basically like split the difference on the road. Right? Houston should be a win at Houston. At Arlington, you might drop that one. You probably drop the game to Birmingham, maybe Michigan. If you do those, that's like your 4 losses. It's just, there's a lot could happen, could not. I think 6-4 is a pretty good one to estimate. I think that even though it's a big rivalry, you probably go 2-0 against DC. You win Houston, that's 3 wins right there. So you eliminate those 3 wins, you go 3-4 the rest of the games. That's kind of on brand for them. They're probably going to, lose a couple of the big USFL games, and they're going to drop like 1 to San Antonio and 1 to Arlington. That's the 6-4 record. I think that's probably what ends up happening for them. They beat Memphis even though they're at Memphis. Could happen, could not. It's a toss-up, but I think 6-4. Again, I think that it's just, yes, they have very questionable, they're the wild card team really because of their quarterback group. Getting a new OC and a new quarterback room is a pretty big deal. Yes, I know Manny Wilkins is back, but you know what I mean. Cordero, Duggan, those are the 2 main new guys. Big question on how good that group's going to be, but you still have an elite team around them. And that's kind of part of the reason I also put them above San Antonio. It's like when I look at that team around the quarterback, the running backs clearly go to San Antonio for running backs. The running back, you got Jacob Sailors for the Battlehawks, so you're incredible there. The receiving core is just insane for them. It's better than San Antonio's, which isn't even disrespectful to San Antonio. They have a good receiving core, just not St. Louis's. So it's one of those things where I think that the more you look into it, if you're going to pick one of them to make it, St. Louis gets that slight edge, though I would not be shocked if San Antonio beats them because St. Louis has a habit for losing big games when it matters. So it's entirely possible that heading into like week 8, right, them and San Antonio are very close and they end up losing both Birmingham and San Antonio, and that cost them a playoff spot. I mean, that's basically what happened in 2023, right? They had that game in week 9 and they blew it. But we'll see. As of now, I'm putting them in second place, 6-4. Which means number 1 is Arlington Renegades. I have 7-3. This is a bold take to some people, I know that. Because of the fact that Arlington is a team that usually does not start the season very fast. They always, take a while to get going. This past season, they kept a lot of games close. Now, unlike a team like Houston, which kind of technically kept them close, Arlington actually kept games close. They lost a lot of very close, walk-off type of games where it was just, they kind of just barely let it get away from them. I think this season they're going to put it all together. Yes, I know they lost a lot of players overall in their team from last year, but they brought back a lot of the big key ones. Yes, the running back room is going to be questionable, but you got an incredible quarterback, arguably the best receiving core in the league when you consider how good they were last year versus the potential that St. Louis has. Arlington's the more proven one, so they're an insane core. The defense has had a lot of upgrades overall from the offseason, and that's the big Achilles heel for them last year. Last season, you could make a very good case they were the best offense in the league, and it's just that their defense totally screwed them over. Their defense upgraded. This is a team that did not need to upgrade their whole team. They could take a slight downgrade on offense as long as they upgraded their defense. They'll be fine. So, 7-3. What 3 games do you lose? Either at Birmingham or the Michigan game. You lose one of those 2 games. And then you lose, you go 1-1 against San Antonio and St. Louis. Those are your 3 losses. You know what I mean? Again, I think 8-2 is possible. Like I said, I think for all 3 of these teams, 8-2 is the realistic ceiling for them. It's just that Arlington is just the best overall. They have the best quarterback group by a mile when you have Luis Perez as your starter. Then coaching, Bob Stoops is, just below Wade Phillips. Wade Phillips is the best in that conference, but then Stoops is right behind him. And then in terms of home field advantage, you have 5 home games compared to San Antonio's 4. And especially since them is, you could argue it's -1 because of going to St. Louis as well. So Arlington gets the edge there, picking Arlington to win the conference, going 7-3. Now, as for the USFL side, last I'm going with Houston, though I do think they improved to 2-8. They do see some improvement. Look, I get they've overhauled a lot of their roster. At the end of the day, they brought back essentially the exact same coaching staff. I just don't see it. This is basically hope Anthony Brown is what Roughnecks fans are trying to tell themselves he is, and hope that Justin Hall can carry this team. That's pretty much it, right? There wasn't really anything insanely super exciting about them last season, right? Their defensive line massively underperformed. It was basically Chris Odom and everybody else either got hurt or underperformed. Now, how much that was coaching? Again, guys like Odom have basically said it was coaching, but then you brought back the same coaches. Yes, you got a new GM who overhauled the roster, but a team like Memphis overhauled their coaching staff as well. So it's an actual overhaul. If you overhaul the roster but keep the same coaches and the problem was coaching, the problem is still there. So I just don't see it. I have not bought into the Houston hype whatsoever. I don't look at this team and go, man, that team scares me. When I look at Memphis, I'm like, yeah, I can see that team winning a championship because of the changes they made. Houston, I can't. And like I said, when I did these predictions, it was I first viewed who can actually win the title. 6 teams I felt could. DC and Houston I felt couldn't. So I'm putting them at last in their respective conferences. So Houston goes 2-8. They might get the win over DC, and they might get one over, Birmingham like they've done past years. We'll see, but number 4, Houston. Third place, going with Memphis. This was a tough one. Wasn't as tough as San Antonio, St. Louis, but this was tough in putting them at 5-5. Easily could sneak into the playoffs, though. This is a really good team. Okay, this is a really good team. The changes they've done to become essentially the Memphis Maulers are great. And the biggest thing that helps them over the Maulers in 2023 is the fact that this is a team that has the Jaron Horton defense and it's feeling like the Ken Wisenhunt offense. So you're kind of like splitting those into two. Instead of like the 2023 Maulers, which is, huge defense, and the offense was basically Troy Williams, please just keep running the ball because our running backs aren't performing the way we need them to, which essentially is what that one was. But I like this team. I think that a lot of the defensive additions are going to work out. The defense is going to be better. It's just the offense is still questionable. They have great receivers, but they don't have all their receivers back. And how well is that quarterback room going to be? The biggest issue with Memphis, and I know some people disagree with this, but I know me and a few other guys I've talked to agree with this. The biggest issue is you have guys that we know what they are, and we know they're not elite quarterbacks, right? Yes, they got rid of Dormane, which I think was a good move. I've said before, I don't think Dormane is a great quarterback to have as a legit starter. I think he was the weakest of the three. But the issue with the T-Will, EJ Perry combo is, especially from what we saw last season, is that really going to win you a championship? I think that holds them back because a thing like Michigan, right? A lot of people are saying, well, what if Bryce Perkins get hurt? They're kind of screwed going back to Danny Etling. People forget they were winning with Etling, right? The Panthers don't need Perkins to win. Whereas Memphis, it feels like they're like the Panthers without Perkins, but we haven't seen them win with that, right? We saw last season they only beat Houston. I think they improved. They go to 5-5. The defense is going to be much better. Offense, slightly better, but they end up missing it by tiebreaker because second place I have the Panthers going at 5-5 as well. I think Michigan does step back a bit. I think that they still make the playoffs, but they do step back. Perkins has to play incredible, but I think overall it's a matter of you had a couple insane performances on the defensive side, right? Nakua and Speaks were just insane last season. You could easily argue the two best defensive players in the league last year. And so when you have those kind of guys, you have the receiving core they did with COC Mariner just having that insane end of the season. Marcus Sims doing what he does. The Colburn offense. It's a lot of things have to go right for them again to have that incredible season like they did last year. I think they go 5-5. I think they see a bit of a step back in a lot of overall areas. There's just no way, even if he's healthy, that Perkins plays as well as he did before. Because if he plays as well as he did before, he's going to make Magoo's playoff run look like mediocre. Perkins looked insane in the two halves he fully played. There's just no way he plays that well for a full season. Potential injury doesn't really affect me too much. I think they're going to be fine with Etling. They're just not going to be as dominant. But overall, I think 5-5. I think that when you look at them, they're a team that probably splits the series against Birmingham. That's one loss. They split the series against Memphis. That's another loss. And then, they might lose either. They might get swept by Birmingham, or they might lose to the top 3 XFL teams, or they might beat St. Louis again, but then lose the other 2 and get swept by Birmingham or something like that. But overall, I think 5-5 is probably where they end up going. I wouldn't be shocked if they go 6-4 or something, but in all honesty, I was going to put him at 6-4, but I thought that there's no way the Stallions are not going to do as good as it would be if I did it, because you can do the math. It has to average 40-40. Number 1, Stallions at 7-3. If I put this Panthers at 6-4, it means I have to put the Stallions at 6-4. Yeah, which is more common or more likely of happening? The Stallions go to 7-3 or 6-4, 7-3, which is more likely than 7-3 for them or 5-5 for the Panthers, 7-3 for the Stallions. So, yeah, 7-3 for the Stallions. We saw in 2023 the team did have a slight drop-off. Yes, I say slight drop-off. They lost one more game. But I think we're going to see the same thing happen again. We're going to see a slight drop-off of dominance in this league, but they're still going to be the best team in the league overall, and they're going to be the best team in their conference. 7-3. They probably split the series to Michigan, maybe split the one to Memphis, and they lose one of the big 3 in the XFL, right? Those are your 3 losses. Maybe you sweep one of the other 2 USFL teams, you lose to another XFL one. You probably win it. You definitely win at DC. Maybe you drop the one at Michigan. You beat Arlington in week 3 at home. You beat Houston in week 4. You're 3-1. Maybe you drop the game at St. Louis since it's at St. Louis this time. And then maybe you drop, the Houston game to an upset, or the one in week 10 against the Showboats and a winning in game for them. That kind of thing. 7-3 makes a lot of sense when you think about it. So not much to talk about. I've said it before. It's hard to discount them as being a playoff team at the very least, but yeah. So that means the conference championship matchups will be the Michigan Panthers at Birmingham Stallions and the St. Louis Battlehawks at the Arlington Renegades. Now, for the USFL side, this might just be me trying to say what's best for the league, because I've said it before. It would be bad for the league to see the Stallions keep winning. Whereas the XFL side, I think it's just kind of the better team wins. That's why I have Michigan and Arlington winning. Yes, it's probably just me not wanting to see the Stallions in the championship again. I've said it with people, like not on YouTube. I think the best case scenario for the league is the Stallions end up getting like the 2 seed in the USFL conference and losing the first round. But I think they're still going to get the 1 seed. But losing in the first round would be the best thing for them. So there's no way they can win it again or even be in the championship game. Because even just being in the game is the bad look, because then that's them still dominating. So that might be why. But I think Michigan, right, they kept it insanely close last season. If it wasn't for a couple of injuries and a couple of bad breaks, especially in the third quarter, they would have won that game. So Michigan getting them in the rematch wouldn't be too shocked. St. Louis, Arlington. Arlington's a better team. St. Louis historically cannot win the games that really matter. Look at the Seattle Sea Dragons in Week 9 of 2023. Look at the San Antonio Brahmas in the conference championship game last year. We're going to see the same thing happen again. Arlington's going to be the better team. They're going to win at home. Which means the championship game is going to be between the Michigan Panthers and the Arlington Renegades. This would be a very fun matchup, because if everyone's healthy and it goes the way you expect, it could easily be the best 2 quarterbacks in the league, or 2 of the 3 best with, Magoo potentially starting for the Stallions, where you would have Bryce Perkins versus Luis Perez. 2 incredible receiving cores. The overall better core versus the better duo. The core that the Renegades have versus the duo that the Panthers have. Running backs probably would be the edge for the Panthers. The defense, though, the upgrades for Arlington, the coaching, even though I think the coaching is better on Michigan's side, the overall upgrades on defense and the offense being a slightly better unit, I have the Arlington Renegades winning the 2025 UFL Championship game. I think the Renegades are a team that are just built to win it if they make the playoffs. Yes, I know a lot of you say they start slow, but at the end of the day, when you look at how they've ended the last 2 seasons, Luis Perez, especially in those last few weeks, has historically been able to perform better than he has before and dominate. He had his book come out, right? The King of Spring himself. He's going to walk away after this game and retire as a UFL champion, which means that, yes, in the lore of the UFL, the only champions would still be the Stallions and Renegades, since, of course, the Renegades won in 2023. I think they get their 2nd championship. It's just hard to deny them winning it in this kind of matchup, in this hypothetical matchup, because you have Luis Perez, who's just this dominant spring football player who historically plays up when he needs to, compared to the Panthers, who something's going to go wrong and they're going to drop this game. Renegades win the championship. So I'll do it. This has been ZomFox. Let me know down below what your predictions for the 2025 UFL season are. Let me know what you guys think overall, who's going to win the conference, who's going to not win the conference. Do you agree with my picks? Do you disagree with them? Again, this is not going to be my power rankings. My power rankings is not going to have the Renegades at 1, obviously, because right now they're not. I just think across the season they will end up being it, which is why I have them winning a championship. So make sure you subscribe with the bell turn on, because we are less than 2 weeks from the season starting. Again, next Monday we'll have the power rankings video, and of course next Friday we will have the game picks for the 2025 Week 1 season. Again, barring anything happening, I should be streaming the Friday Night Football game, the kickoff game, next Friday on a live play-by-play. So be on the lookout for that. I don't know for sure what video is going to come out Friday. I'm debating on if I want to make a couple videos, which one I want to do. We'll see. So be on the lookout for all that. Think about becoming a community member for as low as 99 cents a month. You get an exclusive video every month. You get team emojis, which will be really nice for live streams and overall comments, as well as a few other benefits. And as always, guys, have a great night.